Over the last few decades, it's become an increasingly common trend to alter aspects of comic book characters' identities when they get adapted to film. And these changes can be broad, ranging from race to origin story. Some of these changes fundamentally alter the character to the point of making them almost unrecognizable, but many are small, benign changes made to better suit a specific story or better reflect a modern, more culturally diverse film-going population. But this doesn't stop people from being weird as hell when these small, usually innocuous changes are made. Though some changes are admittedly far less innocuous than others. So, when is it okay to alter a character and when is it not? I'm so glad you asked, because I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, kid. That's what this video is about. Alterations to classic characters are acceptable, and sometimes even narratively superior, when those alterations don't change aspects of the character that are foundational to their characterization, like the way they're written, the themes they usually represent, or how they interact with the messaging of a certain story. It's these traits that make up the core of a character, and as long as this core is intact, varied adaptations are just fine. So let's get into some recent examples. First, I want to discuss Jim Gordon in Matt Reeves' The Batman, who was played by Jeffrey Wright. From the Killing Joke comic book to Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, Jim Gordon's characterization has typically remained pretty consistent. He's a policeman with unshakable integrity that's surrounded by an imperfect world filled with corrupt cops, murderous clowns, and a bat-themed vigilante. Despite this, Jim Gordon works with the imperfect tools he's given, corrupt cops on his police force, and a possibly insane bat-themed vigilante as his closest ally, to make the best of this imperfect world and earnestly seek justice and to improve Gotham for its citizens. This willingness to use his imperfect surroundings to better the world around him as much as he can is one of his defining traits in Nolan's The Dark Knight that sets him apart from idealistic characters like Harvey Dent.
I don't get political points for being an idealist. I have to do the best I can with what I have.
And Gordon's unshakable integrity is apparent in the iconic The Killing Joke comic book, where Joker attempts to break Gordon's mind and send him down a path of insanity by doing unspeakable things to his daughter and then torturing him with the pictures of those things. Gordon doesn't break. In Matt Reeves' The Batman, Gordon works with a relatively inexperienced and untested Batman because he believes it will bring the Riddler to justice faster and thus serve Gotham better. This is perfectly in line with the core characterization of Jim Gordon we've come to know over the years, and the fact that he's played by a talented black actor instead of a white one doesn't detract from this core characterization, despite what a certain sect of terminally online people might want you to believe. In a similar fashion, Jimmy Olsen, a traditionally white character, is presented as black in the animated My Adventures with Superman show. Also, like Jim Gordon in The Batman, this adaptation stays true to the core characterization of Jimmy Olsen despite altering his race. Though these two have similarities, they are very different, so don't get the two Jims confused. Jimmy Olsen's core character consists of him being Superman's best friend, while also maintaining a relatable and down-to-earth characterization. My Adventures with Superman stays true to this characterization, and even explores it in a very interesting way in its third season, through a romance arc between Jimmy and Kara. After all, Jimmy is kind, likable, and relatable, so it makes sense that someone could fall for him, including Supergirl. But Jimmy is also Superman's relatable, human best friend, which leads to some self-esteem issues for Jimmy when it comes to the prospect of dating Kara/Supergirl, a highly competent Kryptonian superhero. Long story short, Jimmy fumbles a baddie.
So relatable.
This storyline is still ongoing as Season 3 continues, but it definitely explores the core characterization of Jimmy Olsen in new, interesting ways. The changes made to this version of Jimmy Olsen also don't detract from the core identity of the character, so I think it's a good adaptation. But what about some less good ideas for adaptations? Don't worry, White Panther isn't real. He can't hurt you. But in all seriousness though, Ryan Gosling got cast to play Ghost Rider in the MCU, and I've seen memes here and there about Ryan Gosling as Black Panther, and these memes are funny as hell.
That's actually hilarious.
but they're only funny because the people who created them understand that, in this case, changing Black Panther's race would absolutely ravage the core identity of the character and the way that character interacts with the themes of the first Black Panther movie. T'Challa's arc in the first Black Panther movie largely revolves around choosing to bring Wakanda from an advanced isolationist nation to a country that participates in global society, claiming the great responsibility that comes with that great power to uplift others in need. This choice and arc is largely facilitated by the film's antagonist Killmonger and his motivations, which are to violently take over Wakanda and use its considerable resources to help Black people around the world negatively impacted by the slave trade diaspora of the colonial era, especially in the United States. Of course, Killmonger kills a bunch of people and does a bunch of evil shit in the name of his mission, which T'Challa stops in classic superhero movie fashion. And over the course of their conflict, T'Challa comes to realize that while Killmonger's methods were obviously flawed, there were some valid points made against Wakanda's isolationist policies included in Killmonger's ethos. This experience convinces T'Challa to resolve to help the world with Wakanda's vast resources instead of remaining isolationist. Now, imagine for a second if Black Panther was white in this story. Yeah, that would be pretty weird and change the messaging and themes of this movie a lot. It would suddenly become a very odd story with insane white savior messaging. Hence why everyone, the memers included, know it would be a terrible idea to race swap Black Panther. But of course, no one is seriously advocating for Black Panther to be white. But some people are seriously advocating for changing Magneto's backstory and ethnicity. For those of you that don't know, Magneto is a Holocaust survivor. The Nazis came for him and his family when he was young, all because they were Jewish. Different. This experience serves as a foundational basis for his actions as a mutant, being especially hostile and defensive towards humans.
As a boy, my people's homes were burned to ash because we dared to call God by another name.
Despite this, some people have been advocating for changing this backstory to make Magneto more of a timeless character, because they argue this backstory makes Magneto feel too old, I guess. Some advocate for swapping his experience in the Holocaust with the fictional genocide of Genosha, a mutant nation, but I'm gonna say something controversial real quick. X-Men has always been an overtly political piece of media, mirroring the struggles of oppressed minorities in our world. Okay, I know. That's not a controversial statement, even a little bit, but to sever Magneto's connection to a real historical tragedy changes the core of the character and weakens that parallel. It's no longer as clearly about people being oppressed because they're different. It suddenly shifts to more about people being oppressed because they're mutants specifically. Instead of Magneto suffering two genocides, one because he's Jewish and one because he's mutant, he would now only suffer genocide for being a mutant. You see how that messaging changes from prosecution because different to prosecution because mutant specifically? Yeah. Also, it's dumb to try and make Magneto's age more realistic. This is literally the X-Men, where Apocalypse and Mr. Sinister, to name a few, are both centuries old. They routinely time travel, and they also deal with other high science fiction concepts like cloning. It really would not be a crazy stretch to say that Magneto's mutant genes make him age slower. Maybe he can control the iron in his blood to somehow slow his aging or something. I don't know. But X-Men has never demanded heavy realism, and I really don't see why they should start here. Without the context of Magneto being a Holocaust survivor, his overly defensive actions suddenly make a lot less sense for such a well-written character. Without Magneto's specific backstory, he becomes a lot less nuanced of a character and instead becomes just another evil comic book villain. So, this alteration would be bad. Like with Black Panther's ethnic identity, the characterization of Magneto and the themes he represents is informed by his experience in the Holocaust and his related ethnicity, unlike the earlier examples of Jim Gordon and Jimmy Olsen respectively. I could spend all day yapping and plenty of other examples, but I think the ones showcased here illustrate my point the best. Anyway, I'm a YouTuber, so you probably know what I want. Do the like, comment, subscribe stuff if you feel like it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!